And it will be Saturday night in Death Valley.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to our inaugural episode of Louisiana Saturday Night. I am Bradley Schneller, and I have with me, I'm going to go with Coach Shane Bohr.
I'll take that.
We still do you, Coach?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like once you're president, they always refer to you as president. Once you coach anything, you just always refer to as coach. So
I feel like we just need to tell the listeners real quick, like your coaching experience, so people know what's up and we got the street cred.
So 20 years plus of coaching high school football from 1A to 5A, the Catholic League on the public side, the private side, multiple state championship appearance, state championship. So I guess I've been there, been in the big lights. I've seen it. I know what it's like to coach against a lot of these guys at this level that are at this next level, and seen a bunch over the last 20 years. So hopefully that's some level of expertise that I'll bring to bridge the gap between.
I'm not gonna ask you to talk shit about Arch, so don't worry.
No, he's a great kid. I loved coaching him on that team for a year. So that was a great experience. He's a great kid. But hopefully I'm going to bring sort of expertise, but not talk to you in technical terms so that you're like, what is this guy talking about?
Yeah, I feel that. And I'm just a fan who likes to talk a lot of shit. So
yeah. How many chat boards are you banned from?
I am banned from Tiger Droppings. That is true. I've been banned for 20 years now. For some reason, they find every IP address I've ever had and will not let me in. But
good for you. Good for you.
So that's why I'm an excellent candidate for this podcast.
Yes.
Let's get rolling, man. So last year, super surprise. Like they definitely exceeded my expectations. I thought it was actually a lot of fun. I thought last year was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I think anytime you have that year where a little different than this year, right? There's a level of expectation now. So any hiccup along the way, and it's like doomsday. Whereas last year there was no expectation, so you just enjoyed the ride.
Yeah, it's fun. Actually, funny thing you say that. I was actually on an SEC message board
and currently banned.
And Alabama was talking about how like this is going to be the most exciting year of football they've had in a while because they don't know what to think. They could be good.
They got a lot of
might not
marks.
Be good.
So you just enjoy the ride, and if you lose a couple, and you just sort of chalk it up like this was a rebuilding year, as much as whatever that word means for a program like that, but. You just enjoy the ride. And I think anytime there is that just insane level of expectations and look, every year we expect or want to win the national championship, right? I mean, that's why they do this. But when you're not sort of in that preseason conversation, when you are, you're extra surprised and you're like, wow, this is awesome. And if you're not, it doesn't ruin your week,
right?
You know, when you lose. So.
As opposed to like the Les Miles years where I thought we were supposed to win the national championship every year. I don't know why I thought that, but I did.
Well, that's the fan in you. You were younger. It was purple and gold every week. If it didn't win, you were in a bad mood till the next Friday. So
yeah. So overall expectations for this team.
Look, we're in the conversation, right? We're in that small group in preseason, and don't get me started on preseason polls, right? It's the most ridiculous thing to me. You just sort of go off of who's got returning coaches, who's got returning quarterback, and who's got the best brand name, and those are your top 10. Just before it doesn't even give a team like Tulane, who like last year comes out of nowhere, like you can't even get those teams in conversations. So anyway, that's a preseason. That's a different conversation. I expect us to be there in the end in the conversation. The schedule is a little bit tougher than people might seem when you first glance at it, I think. But I'm looking, I think, for just improvement from year one to year two at the quarterback position, the coaching staff as a whole, special teams. And kind of see how that, they improve from just year one to year two and then week to week.
Yeah, the schedule is pretty crazy. After we like do this hard fought game with Florida State to kick off the season, we get a little bit of a break or like a warm up before SEC play. And then it's right into it. 2 games right into SEC play on the road. It's interesting. We start out with Mississippi State. One of my favorite games ever for LSU was an away game to kick off the season at Mississippi State on a Thursday night. It's like one of the only times we've ever played on a Thursday night. And I remember Eric Reed just leveled some dude on the sideline, like into the next universe. It was awesome.
Was that back in the band days?
No, it was post band days.
Okay,
so it was post band days. I was just watching.
But yeah, to your point, I mean, you have this top 10 matchup to start, and then you get an in-state opponent, which obviously will be heavily favored, and then you're right into 3 road games out of the first 4 SEC games. Yeah, that's tough. Like, it's still the SEC. Like, Mississippi State, again, are we going to be favored in all these games? Yeah, probably. But that doesn't mean that back-to-back road games in the SEC isn't tough.
Now, we talked about overall expectations for the year. One of the things that I'm looking forward to is last year we had in a ton of transfers, right? Like, we hit the transfer portal hard. Team was young. We were pretty depleted. We didn't even have like our full allotment of scholarships on the roster last year. And so what I think you saw last year was a lot of inconsistency. Like, the team could play. Like, they get up for a game, they could play, but we had that inconsistency there, which showed its head. Really, like, Arkansas shouldn't have been in that game with us. They were. We got shellacked at Texas A&M, which was a big-time disappointment where we just kind of ran out of gas at the end of the season. So for this year, I'm looking forward to what we should see a lot more consistency week to week.
Well, I think that's why there's so much hype on this team, right? You got the coaching staff, which is relatively intact from last year, that had the full offseason, right, to work with the same group of guys who all came back. Now, of course, we do have some transfers still, but not nearly as many as the first year, with Kelly and that staff. So I think that's why there's so much hype. You've got a nucleus of people back, from coaching staff to players. You insert a few transfers. You should see a ton more improvement and more cohesiveness, I think, between quarterback and receivers, those type of things that just takes time to develop.
Right. So in terms of Brian Kelly, we talked about overall expectations. What are you looking forward to with Brian Kelly, especially from a coaching perspective?
Well, look, there's a lot of pressure on him right now, right? And it's the whole year 2 thing. You got the women's basketball year 2, then baseball year 2. So there's this sort of phantom thing about year 2 coaches. Is that realistic? I don't know, to put that kind of pressure on a year 2 coach.
This would be the hardest one for sure.
Yeah, in anything, right? I don't care what sport or what school, like, just to come in year 2, turn it around to that point. I think, I like Brian Kelly because I think he's just the right kind of coach that LSU needs. And I like the fact that, like, his coordinators, are back. So you got this whole nother year. I'm just looking for the team as a whole just to take that next step, right? You took a few little ones last year, and then you'd win in Alabama, and then you lose to Texas A&M. Sorry, you can't do that this year, right? And I think everything starts at the top. I'm not saying he did anything poorly, but he's got to find a way every week to get the team ready to play that next game. And that's sort of what I'm looking for from this coaching staff. Can they get these guys ready week in and week out, which is tough, especially in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, and that leads me to Jayden Daniels, right? Like, Jayden Daniels, he was up and down last year. Some games he played really well where he slung the ball pretty hard, down the field, also had the wheels going. This year, I think we're all hoping as fans, that he finds his receivers downfield a lot more. What kind of step do you see him, or do you think he's capable of taking this year, based off of what you saw last year?
I certainly think he's capable. He's got all the tools. There's no doubt in my mind. I think what you saw last year was just a product of transfer in, new system for him, new receivers, just that cohesiveness that takes time to build, the trust. It's not that maybe he didn't want to throw that ball sometimes and then he would take off running. It was that, and I just don't trust that guy's going to make the play yet, or he's going to be in the right spot where I want to put it. You'll see that this year. Talk about a whole spring, a whole summer, 7-on-7s. Throw the ball and let these guys make a play and trust that they'll do that.
How much is that in a quarter? Like, you played quarterback, you're an offensive coordinator. Like, how much is that in
A lot,
a quarterback's head, right?
a
Like,
lot,
knowing he's going to be there because he doesn't want to throw the interception.
a lot. The trust that that guy's going to be there, or that if that throw isn't perfect, he's going to make a play, or, just that extra quarter second that he can process something and not just take off running. Not that he's not capable with his feet, because he certainly is, and it's certainly a weapon. But man, maybe that extra quarter second, that 10-yard run turned into a 30-yard touchdown pass, right?
Yeah.
And I think you'll see that this year. He won't be as quick to just sort of get out of there.
Well, when you look at that, like, okay, we talked about his hesitation to throw the ball downfield. He doesn't have maybe the trust of his, receivers, or he doesn't trust his receivers. How does that differ for a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, who came in the SEC championship last year and just let it rip?
He's sort of operating a little different. When the backup mentality as a whole, like
if he's a starter, he might not be operating that way,
maybe, right? He's got nothing to lose, right? Hey, I'm the backup, or there's an injury, or I'm just starting this one game because somebody's out. Like, it doesn't really matter if I go throw 2 or 3 interceptions and then they're going to bench me, right? That's not going to happen.
Right.
He's in there. He's sort of the only option. Like, let it rip. There's a comfort of like, I'm just going to sling it. Whereas if you're the starter and you got to worry about, okay, well, they might bench me, or, we got to sort of live to play the next down or the next drive. Maybe punting the ball isn't a bad in this situation. Whereas, and you're a backup, you get in there, the expectations are sort of like, hey, just go out there and have fun. And you do. You sort of just close your eyes and let your instincts and your talent take over, and you just slinging it.
Yeah. Well, so look, right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, okay, we got Caleb Williams at plus 450 to win the Heisman. Jayden Daniels right behind him at plus 1100. Then you got your boy Quinn Ewers with the sick ass mullet at plus 1500. And then you got Florida State quarterback, right even with Quinn Ewers right there at plus 1400. How do you look at what would it take for Jayden Daniels to win the Heisman this year?
One, you need Caleb Williams to not win the Heisman, right?
I mean, going back to back, he's got to have to prove something too.
Yeah, it's certainly tough to do that. But he's going to have to lose it, right? I mean, you'd have to have a Joe Burrow type year where they say, well, I don't really care how good yours was, Caleb Williams. Like, you can't deny that, right? If it's sort of that kind of neck and neck. So you need Caleb Williams to not be sensational, I think, in my opinion. But look, if you look at everybody's Heisman picks, right? Jayden Daniels is usually around that 7, 8, 6 type of pick. But just Vegas is no dummy, right? Vegas is no dummy at all. And so for them to think that, Jayden Daniels is, and it's probably just on potential, not only for him, but as the team, if the team wins the national championship, or I would say even makes the
I think you need to make the playoffs.
Yeah, you make the playoffs, and he has an outstanding year, then I think he's got a legitimate shot.
Yeah,
for it, right?
I mean, Caleb Williams USC didn't make the playoffs last year. They did make a New Year's Six bowl, but he was still amazing.
Now, I'll give you this stat real quick, though, just to show you where Vegas sort of lies, right? Going into last year, Caleb Williams had 0 snaps for USC, right? He was third and going into week 1 at plus 700 to win the Heisman, behind C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Right. So Vegas is no dummy. Like, if you looked at this last year and you're like, oh, this kid hadn't even really taken a snap for USC. He just transferred there. And then so Vegas is no dummy. So is he a legitimate contender? Yes. Does he need to push the ball downfield and have a better year throwing the ball? Yes. And still make those plays with his feet. But yeah, he's in the conversation. He should be. I think he's got the tools. I think that he has the team around him. I think he's got a legitimate shot at
it. That makes me like, this next point is like, LSU's offense should be vastly improved from last year. Like, we have all the talent, the wide receivers, weapons all over the field. Like, Malik Neighbors is legit, first round draft pick next year, or 2 years from now. I think it's 2 years from now.
I think 2 for him.
Yeah, 2 years from now.
You got an offensive line that should just be,
with
all the time in the world. back there.
And we got 7 running backs because we need them all.
Yeah.
Who knows when they're actually
Yeah.
going to be ready
And
to
look,
play.
you've seen that across. Like, look, the NFL is dealing with that right now. The value of that one superstar running back is sort of a thing of the past, right? I mean, it's a brutal position, and you need 3 or 4 or 5 guys with different skill sets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially like college uses them in the passing game a lot more than, let's say, the NFL uses them in pass protection. You need different skill set guys and put them in situationally. And so we got those.
When you were looking back at last year and you look kind of the way the offense operated, what that they did last year, do you expect more of this year?
They were pretty creative. I like their style of offense. I like how aggressive they are. I expect to see more of that. I expect to see the ball being pushed downfield vertically a lot more.
Yeah.
Right. Almost back to the sort of the Joe Burrow stuff. Like, look, how many times did he just throw the ball? Right. That little slot fade and whether it be Jefferson or Chase, like they just went up and got the ball. And you see DBs like turning around, like have no idea where the ball is. Like that's the sort of comfort that I think you'll see this year. And I think as a coordinator, you can only call what your guys can execute. We can sit Monday through Friday and draw up the coolest plays in the world, right? And they all work on the whiteboard.
In fact, I have, and I've showed you plays on the whiteboard.
Yeah. And it's all great. Like every play scores in the coach's office on the whiteboard. But the reality is can they go out and do it? My first year, we had a young quarterback at one of the schools I was at, a freshman, and we would call, 4 verts, right? 4 vertical route passing concept. Probably called it like 10 times all year. They just couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. Couldn't read it. He was too young. But by the time he was a junior, we'd probably call it 6, 7 times a game.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean we don't like the play or we don't, you can't sit there as a fan and say, God, why aren't they doing this? Well, there's a reason they're not. Either the defense is really good at stopping it or we're not very good at executing it. And if you can't execute it against air, on Wednesday's practice, you think I have confidence as a play caller we're going to go out against a top-rated defense and somehow execute it?
Yeah.
But so I think you'll see a lot more vertical passing game.
Well, the obvious thing to me would be that Mason Taylor came on real strong last year at tight end. Brian Kelly likes tight ends. He's put a lot in the NFL. Yeah. Would your expectations be that Mason Taylor is going to be a star this year?
Oh, no, how he's not an All-American, or has that type of year. That position is always the most dynamic on the field, in my opinion. You can have those receivers or that running back or that, but the tight end, when you have you see it in the NFL, right? Like the Travis Kelce's of the world, because you're asking linebackers and safeties to guard those guys.
Yeah, defensive backs are too small and linebackers are too slow.
So it is, if you have a dynamic tight end who can help you in the run game,
it's a game changer. It's
an absolute game changer. It literally it's like having an extra lineman on the field when you want to run the ball, but then having an extra receiver on when you want to throw it. So it is, when you have that guy, it is, as a play caller, it's the most comforting thing in the world, because it asks a defense now to personnel themselves or put the right people on the field based off of down and distance, right? So 3rd and short might be a heavy run situation. So they're going to put extra linebacker on the field and take a safety off the field, or a fifth guard, nickelback, other cornerback. Well, that's a great passing situation now, right? Because they got a linebacker who's normally not on the field trying to guard your most dynamic guy as tight end. So it's the best thing in the world. So I look for one. Yes, the coaching staff loves to utilize them, and we've got a guy that can do it.
Speaking of guarding players, one of my biggest concerns for this upcoming season is LSU's defensive backs,
which is weird, right? Because it's like
I know,
constantly
DBU,
in
right?
the conversation for DBU.
Yeah, I mean, look, who knows what Denver Harris is going to turn into? He is not going to start for the year. He's going to be a backup, maybe even 3rd string as we start this year off. We got a transfer coming in, playing opposite of Jai Alexander, I think. And, I look at it, though, from an offensive perspective, from your experience, if our defensive backs are kind of mediocre at best, but we have an amazing defensive line and linebackers. We got Harold Perkins. Like, pressure kind of alleviates any type of concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Like if you don't have to cover people that long, then you can sort of have, a tier 2, secondary.
Yeah.
I don't want to sell those guys short at all, right? I think the problem that everybody has is that there's no marquee name that we're used to having, right? Where's the Tyrann Mathieu or the, Patrick Peterson or, whoever.
Derek Stingley.
Stingley, who I have a great Derek Stingley story one time when we have time about when, in the playoffs we played against his team. But we don't have that marquee name guy that we're saying, we're used to having this. So that guy would be a top 10 pick. So give them a chance to go out and prove themselves, right? I don't want to say, well, they're a B-rated unit. I don't know. They might be all A+ guys. We just don't know yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. And
but yeah, to your point, though, the better your front seven is and the more pressure you get, well, the less those guys have to cover.
Right. And look, right now we're judging this off of scrimmage practices, those type of things. And if our offense is as expected and our wide receivers are as expected, like they're going against some of the best.
They're supposed to dominate them. Right.
Look,
what the year we made it to the Dome at one of the schools, I don't know if I can say the school's names or not, whatever. The first year we had a front seven that was so dominant. It was scary. And I'm telling you, in practice, if we gained a yard, I would turn to our guys and be like, yeah, that was good. That was good. It's like almost every play was a negative play against those guys. They were just so good. So yeah, like you said.
And I mean, y'all were throwing up 45 points on like every other team.
Then we'd go out on Friday nights and we'd rush the ball, run the ball all over the place. And be like, I told you that play was good. We gained a yard against our guys.
Right.
So to your point, is like you can't put a whole lot of stock in scrimmages because if those guys are as elite, neighbors in that wide receiver room are as elite as everyone thinks they are, well, man, it's gonna be tough to stop those guys. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into a scrimmage. So
yeah, I'm with you on that. So before we get it to Florida State, what is a game? And I hate saying a game because like everybody, we always want to see what we do to Alabama. I hate Alabama. I was actually driving around in my car today and listening to an LSU playlist because I'm getting geared up. You know how I like to just jam out to LSU songs leading into the first game. And I heard this song, I Hate Alabama. It was actually written by a Tennessee fan. It's pretty funny. But nonetheless, can't pick Alabama. What's a game you're looking forward to this season?
It's at Ole Miss for me. I think it's the one that can trip you up. I think, you've got a coach who's extra creative offensively, and that can always give you problems.
I low-key love Lane Kiffin.
Yeah. He's one of those guys that like you hate him, except if he's your coach, then you love him. So I sort of appreciate that.
I don't even hate him. I think he's hilarious.
Like he knows how to play the off-field game. I think he's wildly creative, and it's one of those teams that like he's gonna have nothing to lose. Right? It's earlier in the year. It's first SEC road game, if I'm not mistaken. Is it first?
No, we play.
Oh, we're at Mississippi State and then Arkansas. And then, so it's the start of the 2-game road, even though it's Missouri's the next one. I just think that's a spot. I mean, you got a team sort of under the radar. You don't
probably
really know.
Pissed off for last year.
Yeah, and you don't really know what they have, and that's one of those teams that comes out and then throws a halfback pass for a touchdown, and then throws a double reverse in the third quarter for a touchdown, and you're like, how are they in this game? You're like, what are we doing? It's like because they got nothing to lose, and they're pulling all these tricks out of their hat, and that's the kind of coach he is, and so I think to me that's the one. A&M at the end of the year, like you should have revenge on your mind. That's what
I'm looking at. I'm looking at A&M.
But that's from a revenge factor.
Yeah, but I just don't like Jimbo Fisher. Like,
okay,
that's my reason why. And then he's got Bobby Petrino as his offensive coordinator.
That coaching staff, from what I've heard, is a disaster. Like it's got like personality after personality after personality, all pulling on the rope from different things. I've heard it's a disaster, but.
So do they last? Do they last a year? What do you think is going to happen with them?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know with his buyout, how deep those pockets are. I know it's Texas, and I know it's. We'll have to edit that part out.
Nah, it's cool. It's real life.
Yeah, well, I'll be in a private room before. But anyway, back to Texas's pockets could be deep enough at that point to buy him out, or I don't know.
Yeah, I do like, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the midnight yell, the male cheerleaders and the whole white get up with no female cheerleaders on the side. I don't know. It's just weird. Texas A&M's just a weird school and team, and
they have traditions. They have traditions, and they have stuck to them.
Yes, very much so.
I'm gonna give you a quick coaching thing. And
yeah, I hear it.
Talked about this earlier. Last year, kind of expectations. Last year, one thing I'm definitely looking forward to is our third down conversions or stops on defense. We were terrible last year, and it's the number one stat. Third downs and turnovers are the number one predictor for winning the football game.
Yeah, we were talking about this. Most people think it's like time of possession, how many rushing yards you have.
None of that. Bullshit. Nothing will determine the outcome of a game better than third down conversions and turnovers. And I'm gonna give you an example. Last year, right? You're like, how in the world does an unranked, terrible A&M team beat the hottest team in the country, who's poised to, make a possible run with multiple losses to the SEC championship? We were 4 for 11 on third down and had 1 turnover. Right? A&M was 10 for 15 and had 0 turnovers.
There you go.
And that's the difference in a ball game. And I'll pull out wild examples throughout the year to prove that point to everybody. And I used to do this with my kids every week because we were heavy third down, whether it be offense or defense. Like, I think last year, our offense was in the top 10. Our defense was 74th in the country, which means we're not getting off the field.
Right.
2019, best year ever. Everyone will always remember it. LSU's offense, 4th. LSU's defense, 7th. Right? It is the number one predictor, third down conversions. So I'm looking for a huge leap from the defensive side.
Yeah.
And third downs and getting off the field.
I also think that's where the trust comes in and even with the tight ends, Mason Taylor building on that is, those are your safety valves, right? Especially on third down.
Yeah.
Where I just don't think Jayden had that last year, and so he had to rely on
and he would run for it, right?
He would run for it.
Whereas now I think he get through his progressions more. So, I think offensively we were in the top 10 last year, and we're good there. I'd still look for us to even get better. But defensively, if we can improve, I think that'll be the difference between being in the college football, playoffs versus not.
Yeah. So we got Florida State to start the year. That game was so fluky last year. It was so weird. It was so weird. And I was so pissed off too.
Well, yeah, because like you're in it and you're like, oh, all right, finally we could take a deep breath. And then the way it ends, right, with the blocked extra point, you're like, what just happened? Like usually at the time, like you run to the bathroom real quick, right? And you come back and you're like, wait, we lost? Like it
was weird because the first quarter you're like, what the hell is happening? I'm pissed off. The second quarter you're like, we're gonna lose, whatever.
Well, if you remember,
third quarter they start to come back.
Yeah, I think they threw a double reverse flea flicker for a touchdown. I mean, you get those kind of week 1 games are always a little wonky, right? It's your first time you're hitting somebody else. You don't really know what you have yet, and you kind of maybe have to adjust on the fly. So you get these big ups and downs in a game because you go out and you think, wow, this really isn't working. Let's try this. You're like, oh, we're actually good at this.
Yeah.
Right. So you get these late comebacks and pushes. But you see that on both sides of the ball, but I love the fact that we're playing a huge week 1 matchup. Now I know when you do these schedules 10 years in advance, whatever it is, you don't know what a team's going to be, but I think be careful not to hit the panic button. I think as everybody, especially
it's going to be a hard game. I think it's going to be a hard game.
Like, look, it's a top 10 matchup. Like they're no dummies.
Florida State's offense is good. Their defense is good.
Their head coach, Mike Norvell, who used to be at Memphis as the head coach, and what was previously offensive coordinator at Arizona State, was the head recruiter at Arizona State specifically for Louisiana. They had a guy specific for Louisiana, and it was him. And so him recruiting through the southern part of Louisiana would always pop in, and as I moved schools, he would show up. Got to know him a little bit, enough to say hello, hey, and he knew who I was, kind of thing. But we actually flew out there one year in the off season. I sat down with him for a few days and picked his brain and watched film with him and all that kind of stuff. So I've always been a big fan of his because they were super nice to us, and especially as he recruited through this area. So I'm a huge fan of Norvell. I think he's creative. They got a really good team. They got a really good quarterback, with all the hype. They've got a couple of transfer receivers in as well that are supposed to be big time. Defensive front, and very similar, right? Their defensive front is solid. Yeah, you're gonna have a tough matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to, like, one thing though. Last year, we didn't know how to use Harold Perkins yet. He wasn't on the field that much, against Florida State.
Nor did you know how to use Daniels.
Right. And so, like, we're going into this game, and now Harold Perkins has a year under his belt. We know how to use him. And I honestly, he's going to be the best player on that field.
There's no doubt.
On offense, defense, whatever. He is the best player on that field. And I think that is going to make the difference because, Jordan Travis is a great quarterback. He's a Heisman candidate. Florida State offense is going to be good. Florida State defense is going to be good. I think the LSU offense is going to be exponentially better than last year, especially with the year under the belt with Denbrock. Again, we talked about the trust. We talked about, Jayden letting it.
You're going to have a better sense of what Jayden Daniels and the offense can do now. You already know.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
week 1 last year, you're kind of saying, all right, well, we've had practice, but maybe it's not good. So there's a lot of running. I agree. The offense is going to be way more comfortable looking.
Yeah, and the big X factor to me is Harold Perkins. He didn't really play in that game.
And here's my concern too. I don't want to say if it's a concern, but when we talked about the DBs and that situation, and if you don't get to this quarterback early, right? And what I mean by early is like, the first few 3-4 seconds of the play, and he gets out of the pocket, right? If that first guy misses,
he run.
Gets out on the. He's great with his feet, but the problem is now you're asking the DBs to cover longer and off script, right? They're not running traditional routes at that point, right? They're off script. They're in panic mode. And you got a quarterback like they do can not only make plays with his feet, but throw the ball on the run, and that could be devastating. So I think it's important that when we do get to him, that we get our hands on him.
Yeah. What do you look for, like, the score to be?
It's always difficult, especially week 1. As an offensive guy, I like to see points. But I also love the low scoring game. I think it's less than a touchdown game. I do think that both offenses will find ways to score points, especially maybe as the game goes on. So I wouldn't be surprised with like a 31-27 somewhere in there. I mean, Vegas probably isn't far off.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, my initial thought would be that this game would be very similar to the Alabama game last year, which in a way was in the teens starting the fourth quarter. Right. Like, there wasn't a ton of points, and then it just kind of like broke free. I actually think you might see the reverse. Whereas it's kind of wide open to start the game and then tightens up as it goes, as the defenses adjust, because I feel like the offenses are going to have advantage to kick off this season, especially with the experience for both teams. But, that's my personal opinion. I'm not really sure if it's going to go down like that.
That's a valid. I can't argue with anything you just said.
Right. So, but I do think LSU pulls this out, mostly because I think Brian Kelly is going to be a difference in this game. And I think Harold Perkins is going to be the difference in this game.
Can't argue with any of that.
I also have purple and gold.
I was going to say, yeah, you're looking through a purple and gold lens, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's why we're here. That's why everyone's listening, right? We're not here to root for other teams. We'll probably end up picking LSU in every single game.
Absolutely.
My scores will probably be a little bit closer than your scores and maybe a little bit more analytical, but
42-0.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we're going to get there, but look, we're excited. Football's back. Starts tonight, Thursday, as we're recording, and all through the week. So it's a great week, and I know I'm excited. You're excited. The whole LSU world is excited.
Let's throw this out there because I think I don't know when people are going to get a chance to listen to this, but let's just see if we're right or not. Right? I'm going to throw it out there. I think Utah beats Florida tonight. Even with, I don't know if Utah's quarterback's actually playing tonight. I think they're playing their backup.
You know what? I mean, as a coach, I don't follow them enough, so it's hard for me to weigh in. But it's I hate rooting for the SEC against them when they.
I know,
they're
me too.
out.
Like, I want to root for Florida.
Yeah,
I
even though,
also like
I don't care when an SEC team plays someone out of conference. I want them to. I want there to be no doubt that people, when they talk about the SEC, that's the best conference.
I'm with you. I'm just like really hung up on it because I feel a certain kind of way about Billy Napier. I don't know why. Maybe it's because he was in the running for the LSU job. And then there was like a faction of LSU fans that were riding Billy Napier's jock, and then they're like, oh, he's going to kill it at Florida. He didn't kill it the first year.
And he's already on the hot seat.
And he's already on the hot seat. So
yeah.
I think it's funny.
I don't think you're wrong. I think Utah probably wins the game just based off of, sort of the little bit I know about them, but I hate to root against the SEC.
Yeah, I'm probably going to pull for Florida. To be honest, I'm probably going to pull for Florida.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be close.
The good thing is I don't really care who wins.
That's true too.
Like, you can just sit back. There's always something fun about just being able to watch a game and just enjoy. And I look at it through a different lens. I'm looking at the scheme and what are the coaches thinking when they called certain stuff and the X's and O's behind it. And, when the ball snapped, I stare at the offense and defensive line for like 2 seconds, right? And kind of see. So I can just sit back and enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's why it's tough for me to go to games. I hate going to Saints games. And if I go to LSU games, like I need to go party for a little bit because I cannot sit in the stands and listen to Joe Fan or Bradley Schneller in the stands next to me, mauling coaches.
I've calmed down a lot more watching games with you.
That's because you're getting older, but anyway, I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great weekend.
Yeah, I was listening to this. I was watching these YouTube clips from different moments in the stands, and one, I thought this was so funny, and I thought of you. It was the 2-point conversion, LSU versus Bama, when the Bama player is running off the field. And LSU is getting ready to snap it. They score, throw it to Mason Taylor. We win the game, right? But as this going on, you hear LSU fans in the background of the stand going, "What are you doing? What are you, stupid? Snap the ball. You had a free play."
Right. Like, look, it's easy when you're in the stands and you got the perfect view. It's easy when seeing things that maybe they had a kid, an 18, 19-year-old kid on the field didn't see, but all I know is this is what these people do for a living. They sit in there away from their families, watching film, coming up with stuff. And guess what? When it doesn't work, it's because the other team has good players too and good coaches who are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, oh, why would you run that screen on third and that? Well, you're only saying that because it didn't work.
Yeah.
Had we executed, you'd be saying that was the greatest call ever. So that's why I can't sit in the stands, nowadays. But anyway, it's going to be a great weekend.
We'll see you guys on Sunday night. Love doing this preview pod with you, Shane. And
go Looking
Tigers.
Forward to the whole season.
Yeah, go Tigers. STTDB.